Want to see these videos 5 days early and gain access to other exclusive perks? Then head on over to my Patreon in the description. Every contribution means the world to me.
Rated E for everyone. Mater's hosting the most action-packed race ever. Choose from all new international characters. Get big thrills in Monster Mode. Burn rubber on team tracks, minigames, and multiplayer mode. Cars International video game. Gaming system sold separately.
The year was 2007. Disney's Pixar's Cars had been my new obsession for a while, as I watched the film over and over on DVD, recreated scenes with my diecast toys, and of course, played the video game for hours on end, racing at full speed on the tracks, going crazy looking for all of Lizzie's postcards, and crashing into everyone and everything. Can you tell I don't have a license? One autumn day, I was standing in a queue with my mum and my sister walking through a shop that I can't remember the name of, when all of a sudden, in the corner of my eye, was this very case on the shelf. Cars Mater National Championship for the PlayStation 2. I just had to get my hands on anything Cars related, and I was so excited when my mum picked that game off the shelf and bought it for me. Then I got home and played it. There was a strange feeling going round in my head. I was certainly enjoying this game, but I wasn't enjoying it as much as the first one. I was no stranger to being disappointed by my favourite media. That is why I stepped away from Thomas for a while. But this was a long process. Over the years, I came to the slow realisation that Cars Mater National Championship was nowhere near as good as the first game. It just feels like there was so much missing, and I mean that figuratively and literally. It's the first game, but with so much stripped away. Therefore, it fails. Not as a game in general. Again, I want to reiterate that Mater National is fine as is, but it absolutely fails as a sequel. Because there is no use prevaricating about the bush with this one, guys. This is meant to be a sequel to the first game. And rather than being a worthy successor, Mater National, in my eyes, shows us exactly what could have happened had the first game been made in less than a year. Everything that the team did in terms of ironing out the kinks, playtesting to ensure stability, those aforementioned meetings with Pixar's animators to ensure they got the look of the universe right, was all thanks to having the time to go the extra mile, pun intended. Time that they clearly did not have for Mater National. This is a very rushed, unpolished game, with plenty to still enjoy about it. And in today's video, which by the way exists in the first place thanks to each and every one of you getting my video on the first Cars game to 40,000 views in less than a month, thank you for that, you're all awesome. I want to take a deep dive into what makes Mater National a fun but ultimately very empty and problematic game. From the eyes of a Pixar Cars fanatic who still enjoys this game, but sees it in a much more negative light than he did when he first played it. With over 15 years experience of coming back to this game every now and then, what do I have to say about Cars Mater National Championship? Let's get started. Very little is known about the development of Mater National, so forgive me if this section of the video seems shorter compared to before. My guess is that production began about a month or so after the movie and the first game was released in June 2006. A month is usually a good amount of time to see if something becomes a success. And following the positive reception to the movie and above average reception to the game, not to mention the shit ton of money made from toy sales, Disney no doubt had them dollar signs in their eyes and eagerly sought to make as much new Cars content as possible, including an animated short series in the form of Cars Toons, mostly made up of Mater's tall tales,
If I'm lying, I'm crying.
and of course a new Cars video game. THQ were once again the publishers of this game, working alongside Buena Vista Games, now rebranded as Disney Interactive Studios, and the ever-faithful developers of Rainbow Studios. Jordan Itkowitz, however, did not return as the lead game designer, and so stepping in to fill his shoes was Mark Buchinani. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. At the very least though, Jordan did write the story for this game. A lot of the main voice cast from the first game didn't return either. Other than Larry the Cable Guy as Mater, Tony Shalhoub as Luigi, Michael Wallace as Sheriff, and a few others, Scott Wood would take up the role of Fillmore from George Carlin, Doc Hudson would be played by Corey Burton instead of Paul Newman, and our main boy Lightning McQueen was voiced by Keith Ferguson, taking over from Owen Wilson. He's also provided his voice in several other Cars projects, like the aforementioned Cars Toons, many other video games including the PSP version of the first game, and even a few uncredited lines here and there across the console versions.
Here comes 900 horsepower!
As well as what would have been the temp audio for Lightning in the first movie, as shown in the deleted scenes.
What have you done to me? You put my engine in a steamroller?
Keith does an excellent job in the role. Not that the other actors do a bad job or anything, but Keith is one of those rare examples where you can certainly tell there's a different guy voicing him, but it sounds just close enough to how you'd expect Lightning to sound that it doesn't bother you at all. He even, a couple of times, does some lines better than Owen Wilson in the first game, at least in my opinion. The game came out on October 29th, 2007, and wanting to utilise the more powerful 7th generation of consoles, it was released on the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and about 3 weeks later the Nintendo Wii. The latter two versions were actually developed by Incinerator Studios, who previously worked on the Wii version of the first Cars game. In retrospect, having the two developers each working on the 360 and Wii versions of Cars 1 around the same time production on Mater National started, probably didn't help their already much shorter time constraints. While the original Xbox and GameCube missed out on Mater National, the game still got a PlayStation 2 release, which I'm so glad it did. Regardless of how I end up feeling about Mater National, I can't imagine the frustration of missing out on playing either this or the later Race-O-Rama had they decided to not release them on the only console I had at the time. As before, drastically different handheld versions were released of the game as well, for the Nintendo DS and Game Boy Advance, the latter famously being one of the last games released for the system, for better or worse. Mater National received very mixed reviews upon its release, with fairly common critiques about there being little to no difference between this and the first game. It also had its fair share of coverage on YouTube, believed to be the weakest of the Cars THQ game trilogy, and you guessed it, like a lesser version of the original game. So it's time for little old me to turn on the console, fire the game up, and see what's what. Yeah, I told you this section was going to be short. Last time in the world of Cars. Now it's 1 year later, at least I assume so since it looks like summertime. Mater, on camera, addresses several cars across the globe on Lightning McQueen's plans of building both the Radiator Springs headquarters and stadium. Something that was foreshadowed both towards the end of the first film when Lightning reunites with Sally.
Yeah, there's some rumor floating around that some hotshot Piston Cup race car is setting up his big racing headquarters here.
Really? Oh, well, there goes the town.
And in the first game, with a giant billboard of Lightning at the town entrance with the words "Racing Headquarters coming soon." The stadium is to be used as part of what is originally meant to be the Radiator Springs International Championships, but because Mater can't spell, it is instead the Mater National Championships. A series of races held in the town, featuring not just the residents, but plenty of returning characters from the first game, and some all-new international races, consisting of Otto van Wasserbottom, an endurance race car from Germany, Gudmund, an off-road car from Sweden, Koji, a drift racer from Japan, Emma, a British rally car who competes in the Rust Bucket Race-O-Rama, and Giovanni, a Ferrari from Italy, competing in races both on and off the slowly constructed stadium racetrack. I think? Are these races connected to the championship? They never really say. Each international car acts as the final opponent to whatever part of Radiator Springs you're racing in, and then it's off to do a stadium race, just like how the Piston Cup races acted as chapter finales in the first game. And that's it. That's the story. You have your objective, defeat the international racers and all that, but the story remains static. There's no antagonist to create conflict, thus no build-up to any sinister plans to get in the way of Lightning's journey. There's the absence of Sally, which really makes parts of the world of Cars feel missing. And worst of all, I think, is the next to no cutscenes before or after each individual race. The first race of the game, the Radiator Springs Circuit, has a cutscene that shows us how each car we see in the race gets involved. Introducing newcomer Philip, a tourist car from England who nearly crashes into McQueen when he drives on the wrong side of the road.
You do know you're on the wrong side of the road, right?
Yes, so sorry. I'm still getting the hang of it, you see. I'm visiting from England.
Oh, I say, when will the Americans learn to drive like respectable citizens? Incompetent bastards. So when Lightning talks about driving safely with him on the other side of the road, Philip mistakes it for getting a racing lesson from the Lightning McQueen, and his loud and excitable nature voice grabs the attention of the nearby Fred, the rusty car from the film, Doc, and Barry from the Queen's races in the last game, and McQueen just thinks, sure, why not, and the five of them go and race. It's a silly setup for a race, but it's funny, and by the by, it's really all we get in terms of having setup for these races. In the next big race, Fillmore's Nature Preserve, we get no cutscene and just jump to the start line with Sarge, Flo, Lenny, and Vince. But where's Fillmore? Is it not his reserve? Are we trespassing? Get off my fucking property, man. Then you get races like Wheelwell Circuit, where it's Ramon, Flo, Mia, and Lenny, or the Ornament Valley Airport, where it's Fillmore, Sarge, Vince, and Sonny. How do these races begin? I get that the first game had cutscenes of whoever was nearby just showing up to the road races, but there was always a cutscene showing them getting ready. Every race, no matter how little it contributed to the story, had an intro. Here, the only times we do are for the new characters, which... I'll talk about them later. But even they don't show how all the racers get involved. This one has Lightning and Sheriff meet the newcomer Auto, and then the race begins, and all of a sudden, Gerald and Snotrod? Huh? If they took the time to make a cutscene showing how all 5 racers joined in on the Radiator Springs circuit, then there had to have been plans to properly introduce the rest of the road races, surely. Because without it, they feel very... staged. Like they just pick whatever characters they had from a slot wheel and just plonk them into the race with no rhyme or reason. The lack of cutscenes in general also makes you feel a sense of disconnect from the world of Cars. Like you're not exploring the map to meet up with familiar faces or fun newbies in town anymore, but instead just driving from one event to another. You enter the race, win it, and then move on to the next one like you're just mindlessly scrolling through social media. No funny character moments, no memorable lines said by anybody, not even a chance to drive into the characters as they wait for the race to begin. Nothing. That's not to say we don't get any moments in the cutscenes though, because we do. While not every joke lands, there is the odd time where a character gets me with a funny line.
You know what I had to practice on? Dirt track, wooden fences.
And you had to drive 12 miles to school in the snow without chains. Come on, Doc, this is gonna be great for the town.
Bellissimo. And then you come back, and we make you big and strong again.
You mean bigger and stronger, right?
Right. It's what I said. Big and strong.
Particularly from Mater, who either has me laughing at the things he says, or just the way he says them.
Look, I done made you cry with that last question.
I'm not crying.
Sure you are, right there. A tear.
That's not a tear, that's condensation. It's dew.
There ain't no dew.
Where are my manners? My name is Emma.
My name's Mater, and I've been looking for my manners for years. Fans? Shoot, I ain't got no fans. Well, unless you count the sheriff, but he has to come watch me for legal reasons. We're going to Europe? And just where exactly is that again?
It's just over the pond.
Pond? Oh, dang, I can't swim. Eh? Ta-da! Ow.
For a game with Mater in the title, it's nice to see him have his moments like this. He may just be the most entertaining character in this game based on these cutscenes alone.
Mater, that was incredible! Are you okay?
Oh, yeah, that was fun. Call a tow truck.
Speaking of, I think now's a good time to discuss characters, and as always, I'll start with the new guys. The international racers, beyond their solid designs, are kinda bland to be honest. Straight up one-dimensional competitive race cars, and are the ones who really suffer from the lack of cutscenes throughout the game. Otto talks about competing in races that last 24 hours, even wanting to race again immediately after Lightning beats him, but nothing else is done with that concept. Mater and his cousins are swooned by the appearance of Emma at the Rust Bucket Stadium, and she later becomes a fan of Mater when he climbs the ladder in the championship. A female car from England who Mater gets the hots for, plus he talks about having stories behind his dents.
I bet there's a story behind every dent here.
Boy, it sure is. And they all end with me smashing into something.
And this was years before Cars 2 would essentially copy this plot point. I do feel like I prefer this dynamic compared to... oh god, what was the purple one's name again? Holly Shiftwell, yeah, her. Because at least with Emma, she's immediately wowed by Mater for who he is. Also, this line from Mater is genuinely sweet.
I hope I never forget the story of this dance.
Goodman has a spooky reveal, believed to be a ghostly voice deep within the closed-off cave of Ornament Valley, only to just be a very loud and energetic off-road racer. He talks about the Haunted Hook, a monster of rusted metal who's also scared of light, hence why he wears so many lights. Lightning tries to introduce him to Mater, he thinks Goodman is the ghost light, and Goodman thinks he's the Haunted Hook, as the two run away. God, to say that felt like a half-assed setup for a joke would be a fucking understatement. It's like if out of nowhere I said my biggest fear was the Nokia camera scouse. Thankfully though, they're just a myth. The Nokia camera scouse! Koji is alright. He's the only international racer who doesn't speak English, and his ties to being a professional drifter are interesting. He's also, weirdly, the only international racer who does not show up in the final races of the game, only ever showing up again for the final cutscene before the credits. So only getting to race against him in the secluded mountains of Tailfin Pass makes him kind of mysterious. Like he came to Radiator Springs not to compete in the Mater National, but instead practice drifting in the mountains. It's not much, but it's something. It feels like they were setting something up with Giovanni, having a rivalry with Lightning, but they ran out of time for it to go anywhere. He's a friendly guy whose admiration towards Lightning sets off his ego, but other than the first relay race where we meet him at Luigi's Casa della Tires, we don't see him until the final race of the game, where he and Lightning just hype up the opening of the racing stadium as they cut the red ribbon. God, such a waste of potential, man. I've nothing to say on the returning cast, as, again, they're notably absent, so instead I'll just talk about McQueen. He's more or less the same as he was when we saw him in the last game, a kind and thoughtful soul who still gets cocky from time to time, but never to the point of making him seem arrogant. I hear some people say he's too nice in the game, and personally, I don't see it. Yeah, he's very chill with a lot of the new racers, but that's only because they didn't come to mock him or prove their superiority over him like the Queen's racers did and the Neon cars. No, they're just here for friendly competition. Giovanni especially. If Lightning immediately started bragging as soon as he met them, that'd feel detrimental to his character at this point in his life. Besides, he still has his moments throughout the game.
Hear that, Luigi? He's a fan of mine. What do you say, guys? You want to race on my team? What do I have to do to impress folks around here?
My only issue is that, again, there's very few cutscenes in this game, so there aren't really any big moments of him showing off his competitive side or his kind side, at least compared to before. Lightning was certainly consistent, but I wished we got to see more of him and the rest of the characters, new and old. Speaking of seeing more, what the hell happened to the world map? It's all gone, sort of. What made the first game so awesome was getting to explore the world of Radiator Springs outside the main town. The different off-road tracks, climbing rocks, exploring the mountains, all of that. I get it, the desert could get visually repetitive at some points, but it was the fact that any and all racetracks you took part in could be driven to in the world map that made the game feel so special. Well, this time around, for Meta National, I guess they had to cut corners with the game testing to cope with the much shorter production cycle. While I totally understand why they'd have to do so, if that was the case, again, I'm only guessing because I have jack shit to work with, it does mean that the once vast open world of Radiator Springs, Ornament Valley, and Tailfin Pass are now much smaller. The Willys Butte dirt track and the entirety of the open desert, gorges, hidden pathways, and giant rocks surrounding it, gone. The woodlands near Luigi's Castanella Tires, gone. The alternate desert track for entering Ornament Valley, gone. All of the desert tracks away from the main road of Ornament Valley, gone. Everything that isn't the singular oval track at the peak of Tailfin Pass, so the abandoned mine, the jumping rock, the huge climbing past the waterfall, and the hidden tracks that go behind that waterfall, all of it just gone. It's the Radiator Springs experience, bite-sized. It seemed like they wanted to do more with the pre-existing world map because, interestingly, there are new additions to each of the 3 worlds. Radiator Springs got the short end of the stick, only getting this one desert track to the left of town that cuts away from the main road, probably because they didn't want the kids to see a significant part of the world map they had to cut out. Tailfin Pass didn't get much either, which already pisses me off considering how it was my favourite of the 3 worlds beforehand. But now we have the once mountainous road off the beaten track, now just a main road for other cars, and a giant cave which is very big but so needlessly spacious. This really doesn't make up for most of my favourite map being left out, it really doesn't. Ornament Valley, on the other hand, bloody hell did they give this place a drastic makeover. What was once just one road and one petrol station with the majority of its landmarks off-road has now been converted into a massive airport, a huge runway where you can do a little speed chasing Top Gear style, and a giant plane hangar with a screen showing your point of view. There's a truck stop for all the race cars for the Piston Cup Championship that are weirdly nowhere to be found. Nearby, there's an RV park with no RVs in sight, but hey, I dig the tropical resort vibes. The Rust Bucket Stadium is still here, and we can actually drive behind it and see the inside of the stadium itself, something we couldn't do before. I don't think so anyway. Yeah, the railway line and everything else to the left of the valley is completely cut off, but now the location feels a lot more streamlined, and the new additions help to give it more life. Kudos to you, Ornament Valley, you've had quite the glow up, and I'm loving it. The only issue I have is that during the making of this new map, they took away something very important. The sun. You can only explore Ornament Valley at night time, despite numerous races in the valley and the 1 or 2 cutscenes that take place at dawn? Sunset? I don't know, my knowledge of the sun is pretty shit. It certainly doesn't help with the other empty desert land beside it, that's for sure. Look at all this bland sand land of nothing, goddammit. Am I playing Cars Meta National or Doom? I'm happy Ornament Valley got an upgrade, and in all fairness, the airport does look cool at night. I just wish I could see it properly without all this darkness. But the biggest disappointment of this game's world by far is that the racetrack locations cannot be driven to in the world map. Okay, I tell a lie. The first of the 3 racing challenges in all 3 locations are a part of the world map available to you. That's good. But the second and third racetracks are completely inaccessible anywhere else. A decision that really baffles me because why would you remove one of the coolest parts of the first game? I get it, not every location you raced in before was accessible in that game, the Rust Bucket and Piston Cup stadiums were out of bounds, but it didn't matter because literally every other place you could race on in Radiator Springs could be driven to and observed. And you know what? I'm convinced that this was the plan for Meta National, not just with those aforementioned first races being accessible in the world map, but because the blockages stopping you from exploring the unexplorable places feels so rushed. A couple of rocks here and there, the road closed signs from the last game just plonked in the road while you can still see the rest of the world map behind it. This huge ass door in Ornament Valley being closed just because. Same with this doorway in Tailfin Pass. It just seems so silly not to be able to drive on it freely. Not to mention, look at this. See that machine up there in the mountains? That is the same road you can drive on in the Rust Bucket Grand Prix. If it's programmed to be there, that means they had intentions of allowing you to drive up there in the world map. It just has to. And that sucks, because the places that you do get to see in these racetracks are such fantastic set pieces design-wise that really show how the world of Radiator Springs has evolved over time. The gorge beside Sarge's boot camp, once empty and barren, now has springs bursting with water, a short cave with collapsing stalactites, and Darude Sandstorm. This other gorge in the forest to the right of town that was nothing more than a spot for collecting a few bonus points in the last game, is now being used as a racetrack with its own new route to an abandoned logging facility and an old bridge. An open cavern in Ornament Valley, where the sun shines through the gaps to light up all the twists and turns in one of the best named racetracks I think I've ever seen, Inside the Turkey. Must be Christmas. A mine made up of openings and several tunnels, old and new, lit up with lights that have cables going all over the place. And while we lost the Tailfin Pass mineshaft from the first game, we have an all-new abandoned mineshaft which, in all honesty, I love more than the last one. There's minecarts running loose down the tracks that are always funny watching other cars crash into, until you hit one yourself.
Ow! Ball! Where's the ball?
A ginormous wooden bridge, several old tunnels, and even an entire abandoned mining town. I want to know the backstory of this place. Who worked here? Did they move away when Radiator Springs got bypassed? What was life like for those cars living high in the mountains? This is really cool. They also reformatted the road connected to this giant rock that lets you jump over the forest, now being connected to this dangerous road that runs through the canyon tracks that require you jumping over the guide arrows. That's a nice twist. Just make sure you're going fast enough.
Nice!
Nailed it. All of these make for fantastic set pieces, but I struggle to connect with them because I can't stop to observe my surroundings. The stadium and Rust Bucket racetracks, I can understand not being able to drive on those, but not the other ones that are part of the world map. Look, they're right there! Let me through, you miserable signboards! I want to explore these places and not be told to shift my ass because of a timer counting down the minutes before they tell me I'm slow as fuck! Speaking of those aforementioned stadium races, I can at least say that the Rust Bucket races are the best that they've ever been. Rather than running around a figure 8 for 12 laps, which was still fun, don't get me wrong, each of the 4 Rust Bucket races have different track layouts. Which doesn't really make sense, but hey ho, the track layouts for the Rust Bucket Stadium also changed around in the first game, so it evens out. Besides, these tracks are way more fun to race on. Plenty of tight bends, boxes and barrels to smack around all over the place, and plenty of chances to crash into other cars. I think my favourite of these is definitely track 3, for this descending long spiral that's great fun to drift on. The racing stadium tracks are okay. I do miss the dazzling chaos of the Piston Cup stadiums, but I like how over the course of each race you can slowly see the construction making more and more progress, until you finally see the spectators crowded in the seats? Parking spaces? Are cars capable of sitting down? Okay, so it turns out they can, just not without exposing themselves.
Get a good peek, city boy.
Cars International feels both undercooked from a story perspective and severely trimmed down in terms of world design. I hate to say it, but it feels exactly like a story written for a movie tie-in game. And that hurts to say because I'm sure Jordan was just doing what was asked of him, and to his credit, there are some great lines of dialogue as I mentioned before. It has a premise with potential, it has an interesting new world to explore, but it's so restrained. Held back by needing to meet a year-long deadline and the problems that come with it in terms of cutting corners and the team throwing together what they can in less than a couple of hours. It isn't phoned in. There's clearly an effort from dedicated people. The story has the pieces and the potential new world has the right setting. Both are not lazy, but they are severely rushed, and as a result, make the game feel very empty. I'll gladly take the first game's story over this one. The controls are more or less the same as the first game, but with a few differences. Some for the better, like how you can now do the backwards driving taunting from the start without having to unlock it first in a minigame, and some for the worst, like how you are, for some reason, back down to using a small boost and have to work your way back up to using a full bar again. You don't even get any in-game cutscenes showing you earning the boost like before, the game just decides when you're allowed to use it more. Mater, don't tell me how much boost I can use, I know exactly how much is enough. Also, here's something weird I discovered by accident. Whenever you jump at a standstill, not only does the camera automatically swoop round to the back, meaning it thinks you're going forward, but just jumping on the spot is enough to get you big air bonus points, something that you couldn't do before without building up speed and jumping off a big ramp. Are you telling me that if I want to unlock every character, paint job and bits of bonus material, all I have to do is jump on the spot several times and build up my bonus points without having to play a single race? Yeah, I'm not doing that. Once again, the physics can get a bit goofy, though not as bad as the first game where it occasionally has a fit every other time you crash into something. Even then, like before, it can lead to some hilarious moments like these.
Stop. We're up.
Just stop the run and stop the run.
Mate National is much more of a stable game this time around, although it's probably because I don't play this game as often as I do the first game, so the disc isn't as worn out, I guess. In terms of presentation though, that's where things get tricky. Because the game was developed for the more powerful Xbox 360, PS3 and Nintendo Wii, they obviously had to bring it down for a console that isn't anywhere near as powerful. I'm guessing they had to take the PS2 assets and reanimate the cutscenes top to bottom with the HD cutscenes as reference material because the angle of certain cutscenes are different. You can tell because everything is more zoomed out in the PS2 cutscenes compared to the HD ones, and there are asset differences like these bush arrangements. If that is the case, again I can only guess, I don't know, the characters still look and move like they do in the movie and the last game, but something feels rigid about it, almost like they're being puppeteered. Not helping is that the frame rate feels very inconsistent. These cutscenes on the more powerful consoles seem to be animated at 60 frames per second, and it seems to be cut down to about 30 for the PS2. Sometimes when more than 4 characters are on screen, it runs just fine, but other times it chugs. Though I guess because there's next to no cutscenes, I should be grateful that I'm not subjected to as much of the frame rate acting like a millennial without their vape pen for more than 5 minutes. The models look better, more of a shine on characters like Lightning looks nice, but overall they're just fine. Want to see something funny? Do you remember how my copy of the first game sometimes had cutscenes fail to load assets? Well, with my copy of Mate National, there were 2 instances where the camera just forgot to move. Once when Sarge was talking with Lightning and Mater, and again when Lightning and Mater left the tractor farm at the end of the final tractor tipping game.
Did you see that one? He went like...
Still, don't you feel kind of bad for him?
No, it's okay. I mean, shoot, this is the most exciting things that's happened to them in a long time. I mean, if tractors could talk, I bet they'd thank us. They'd say,
Moo?
And this was not a one-off thing either. When I played through the entire game again a second time, the same thing happened with the exact same cutscenes. Damn, a game called Mater National and they didn't even want me to see Mater. From that last statement, you're probably wondering, Luke, why did you play the game twice? Good question. You see, a significant change to the story mode is that you can now select what difficulty you want to play with. Originally only part of arcade mode, now you can choose from 3 varying levels of challenge for the races and minigames spread out across the world map, with the option to change it in the menu if things get too tough or too easy for your liking. You can make things easier for yourself on your first playthrough with rookie mode, or if you're feeling confident, you pick pro mode, making things slightly harder. Then, if you're up to it, you can pick champion mode. Yeah, the difficulty level once locked behind using a unique profile name is now the default hardest difficulty in Mate National. Good to see they're learning from the first game's piss-easy story mode and making things more of a challenge now. For that reason, I stuck to playing champion mode on my first playthrough for this video because I wanted to see what challenge the game asked of the player at its absolute base level, and it's an improvement. I still found myself winning every main race on my first try, but the game does make you work quite a bit to hold that first place spot. You can't make too many mistakes, you gotta make sure you drift on the right bends, tilt around the sharp corners and keep using that oh so delicious boost to keep up with whoever's in first place, because yes, you will not have the lead all to yourself all the time. A couple of times you will spend a good 2 or 3 laps chasing the lap leader, and right on the final corners, if you play well enough, you'll just about overtake them and cross the line in a victorious manner. That alone makes these races feel much more satisfying to win than previously, and so I see Champion Mode as the difficulty you should strive towards should you decide to play this game. Casually, just going from race to race, Champion Mode makes this game a challenging but still fun experience. Going for 100% though, it isn't fun anymore. In Cars 1, there were also mini-games across town for you to play, but unless they were required to unlock the next road race like Doc's Powerslide Lesson unlocking Doc's Challenge, or Sarge's Boot Camp unlocking Sarge's Off-Road Challenge, these mini-games were completely optional. So getting 100% in the first game was not only a breeze with the story mode's easy difficulty, but it also had no real purpose. Here, however, most of the minigames do have a purpose, and credit where it's due, I do like how the game subtly convinces you to complete them. In the cutscene that plays after the first stadium race, there's a moment where Lizzie sneaks up behind Lightning and smacks a random sticker on his back window.
That's for winning the race.
Something that she never does for any other stadium race. You go to Ornament Valley, look at the map and see the white stars for the races to complete, and see that one is for the optional Rust Bucket races. Optional because they don't unlock any of the next race courses in the valley when you beat them, but when you do complete them, Lizzie appears once again and gives Lightning another sticker. Even though it was Mater who won the Rust Bucket races, but let's not question that. Only this time it's a much smaller one on his bumper, and when you look at the 5 other empty gaps on his bumper, you eventually put 2 and 2 together. Completing the optional races and minigames will reward you with bumper stickers. I honestly fail to remember the last time my arse was used for a stamp collection. There is one ongoing minigame that doesn't give you any bumper stickers, and that's Doc and the Law's Race and Chase, but the rest of the optional stuff does indeed have a reward behind it that you'll have to beat all the levels to get. Sometimes you can complete all the levels in one go, like Ramon's Rhythmic Rumble or Ghosting Mater, but other times you'll have to complete a couple of levels in Radiator Springs, then have to go to Ornament Valley or Tailfin Pass to play the next parts. This adds a great sense of reward for going for 100% in the game, as you do get a visual change with the stickers on the Queen's bumper both on the racetracks and in the world map. What's more, if you collect every sticker before entering the 3rd stadium race and the 4th relay race, then after the closing cutscene and the credits go by, you'll unlock a 4th stadium race, which, after beating that, gets you a bonus cutscene where Lightning puts his bumper stickers on a plaque right outside his new racing headquarters. I'll admit, putting something on display that was once stuck on my arse without consent,
I like it 'cause you
isn't something I'd do, but at least the game acknowledges you going out of the way to get everything instead of just a complete score tally on a save screen. So from all of that, if you were to ask me why Mater National isn't fun when you decide to play every race and every minigame in order to get 100%, it's because, well, on top of the issues I already mentioned, you know, with the lack of cutscenes, the very empty story, and the much smaller world to drive around in, the game is so fucking slow and very repetitive. Let's start with Fillmore's Fuel Frenzy, a challenge where you drive around the track, only now with a stipulation that you have to keep an eye on your fuel gauge. You fill it up by collecting these petrol cans scattered across the track, and each number on the can represents different amounts, 3 being the biggest and 1 being the smallest. But not only do you have to make sure you don't just go for the big cans straight away and overfill your tank, wasting fuel in the process, but you also can't just drive around always choosing number 3 cans, because they will eventually turn into smaller 2 and 1 cans if you've already used them in the previous lap. It's an interesting game mechanic that teaches about being resourceful with fuel consumption, but god does it wear out its welcome in the first few levels. Not only do you have to play Fuel Frenzy on the racetracks that you just drove on, but there's no other cars around because Doc and Mater who you race against just zoom off into the distance, and you have to complete 4 laps before you run out of fuel. It may not seem so bad at first, but when you're asked to do a 3-lap race on a track and then do another 4 on the same track, whilst making sure you don't burn rubber too much without your organs spluttering to a stop, These challenges become so tedious, especially when it comes to the last 2 tracks of Tailfin Pass. I love the design of the upper mine, I really do, but Christ on a bike, even this place loses its luster when you're having to drive around slowly, making sure your heart doesn't give up. And Canyon Run. Canyon bloody Run. The longest damn racetrack in the whole game, to a point where they only ask you to complete 2 laps instead of 3, still asks you to do 4 laps of the track in Fuel Frenzy, twice the amount of what's normally asked of you in the road race. I don't care that I got most of these on my first try, because who plays a racing game to drive slowly and carefully? Also, Fillmore, if you're gonna have a nature preserve but then proceed to leave dirty, smelly petrol cans all over the place, including your own nature reserve, I think you have your priorities backwards.
The 60s weren't good to you, were they?
Ramon's Rhythmic Rumble is not much better, being honest, but at least it's something we haven't seen before in Cars. It's Dance Dance Revolution, but with Ramon grooving out to some music from the game's song list and some that are exclusive to that minigame itself. The repetition mainly came from me struggling to keep up with the timing of pressing the shoulder buttons during the song, making sure I didn't miss too many beats, otherwise I'd lose the rhythm and have to start again. Oh, by the way, I also caught hay fever when I recorded this gameplay back in July, so that didn't help either. But I still persisted, and that's when I discovered something really stupid about these minigames. They don't give you the option to select the next level as soon as you've completed the last one. Instead of completing, say, level 1 and then asking if you'd like to try out level 2, you know, like you used to be able to do, you're instead forced to go back to the world map, wait for it to load, select the minigame again, choose the next level, and then wait for it to load again. Every single time. And this is not a one-off either. Every other minigame, whether it's 3 levels or 7, you are stuck having to exit one level once you've completed it, and then select the next one, while waiting for it to load twice. Now I can sit through a loading screen. I've played Crash Bandicoot Wrath of Cortex and Sonic 06. But having to needlessly wait through several of these things not only drags the already repetitive nature of this game down to a crawl, but because another thing they omitted for Meta National was unique art pieces for each race and minigame. Every race and minigame now has one loading screen set with each of the 3 main areas of the world map, which they are nicely illustrated, don't get me wrong, but with the amount of times you'll see them just because of this game's backwards method of minigame progression, you'll just get tired of seeing them. Oh wait, I tell a lie, there is a minigame with its own unique loading screen, and that's Mike and Sully's Last Laugh, which honestly sounds more like the title of their eulogies. I get it, they wanted to make a special effort for these special guest appearances of other Pixar characters now in Cars form, which is cute even if it doesn't make any sense. But why can't all the games have this? To talk about these Monster Trucks Inc. minigames, they're okay. You drive around the open area as Mike trying to collect more laughter canisters than Sully. Kind of a spoiler if you didn't watch Monsters Inc. before this. And you can teleport to different corners of the map with these portal doors like in the movie. They're one and done challenges where no matter what difficulty you're on, it feels like Sully hasn't fully recovered mentally from his tumble down the Nepali mountain. Also, whenever you collect a laughter canister, it sounds like Lego Batman. Returning from the first game, as expected, is tractor tipping. New farm layouts, new tractors, and new ways to piss me off with this game's padding for time. There are 6 levels of tractor tipping in this game, and after the first 3, there's a cutscene where a couple of the tractors escape the farm because McQueen and Mater left the gate open. This is setting up a cutscene in another minigame, where Sheriff tells Mater off for letting the tractors loose again. Rather than letting you play the 3 remaining tractor tipping levels before you decide to try out ghosting Mater, you are physically unable to continue tractor tipping unless you play at least 1 level of ghosting Mater, and then you can play the rest of tractor tipping. Why are you doing this to me, game? What is stopping me from completing one minigame without having to play another? God. While I'm on these minigames, the tractor tipping levels themselves are perfectly fine as before. There's a new stipulation where you can't go too fast on stretches of gravel in the field or else Frank will hear you, but this never became an issue. and ghosting Mater works the same as it did with its Xbox 360 and Nintendo Wii exclusive inclusion in Cars 1. Your steering is inverted and you have to guide Mater to scaring points to keep his momentum going until he gets back to the junkyard. Or you could just do what I did on the last level and use the momentum you already have and make a beeline for the finishing point, skipping the entire level. Both these minigames are solid, I just wish one didn't stop me from making progression in the other. Unfortunately, there's another instance of being locked out from making progress, only it's worse because it's tied to the main story progression. You see, another optional thing to do in this game are the monster truck races, one in each of the 3 areas. You follow an arrow to drive through these guideposts, but how you get to the guideposts is completely up to you, as there are no barriers for marking out a track, and so there's none of those weird countdowns for getting back on the road. I dig this concept. The monster truck controls can get a bit wonky on uneven ground and tight corners, but it only took me, 3 tries, and by then I was a natural. It's something new that I appreciate for being optional. Except it isn't, because these monster truck races are locked behind you needing to collect parts for Monster McQueen, making Mater jealous and wanting to be a monster truck himself, going out again to find parts for Mater, and then witnessing his admittedly humorous monstrous outrage.
Tyrannosaurus Rex!
But you cannot progress through the game until you have done this. Yes, you can play all 3 races in Radiator Springs and the newly introduced relay race, which by the way is just the first racetrack you've already driven on, only you swap between characters on each lap, in order to unlock the stadium, but you will be physically unable to go any further until you do this mindless scavenger hunt, which unlocks the optional monster truck races. It's not the end of the world, it really isn't. You even unlock the option to play as Monster McQueen in the world map, which is cool, if a bit cumbersome to control. But needing to drive around this much smaller, emptier town, which I also forgot to mention, has no music playing, so you're just driving in awkward silence with nothing but random cars passing by making noises. It all just drags for something that has no bearing on the championship whatsoever. What does this have anything to do with this? You know what else is repetitive? The amount of races in each world. I know I keep bringing up the first game, but it bears repeating how much Mater National bears repeating. Cars the video game had 19 road races, which all unlocked 5 Piston Cup Stadium races to complete for the story mode. 24 mandatory races to play seems a bit excessive, but the difference was that how many road races you played before moving on to the next Piston Cup race was completely random. In Chapter 1, you need to play 4 mandatory road races, technically 5 if you want to count the power slide lesson before Doc's challenge, to unlock the first stadium race at Palm Mile Speedway. But then in Chapter 2, you have 3 races, plus Sarge's Boot Camp minigame, which if you want to get technical has 3 separate levels, so that comes to 6 races to complete. To save time on the others, Chapter 3 gives you 3 races to unlock the stadium, Chapter 4 gives you 6 plus 2 minigames, and Chapter 5 gives you 3. Not only does the varying amount of races to complete in each chapter prevent the world map of Radiator Springs from going stale, but from Chapter 3 onwards, when you start to unlock those in Ornament Valley and Tailfin Pass, you're not stuck to just the one area trying to unlock the next stadium race. Chapter 3 gives you access to Ornament Valley, but the 3 road races have both variety and are not all set in that area, technically. Sheriff's Chase is a single-lap hybrid of the main Radiator Springs town and the twisty mountain deserts of Ornament Valley that you'll be seeing for the first time. Once you unlock the valley, you get the Ornament Valley circuit where you now get to see the area properly in broad daylight and race against a fleet of new colourful characters. Oh look, a cutscene showing off their personality. Then, just in case you don't feel like driving on the same track again, the third race takes place in the all-new Rust Bucket Racerama Stadium, with a new track design and an all-new premise of racing 12 laps in a figure 8 whilst the cars constantly smash into each other. The same applies to Tailfin Pass. You're never just needing to complete races in one set area just to get to the next chapter. But wait, there's more. Because if you play your cards right, you can tackle some of these races in any order you want. You could say, I don't want to go to Sarge's Boot Camp just yet. I want to race against the cars from Britain and Mexico in the North Desert Dash. I could make a beeline for Ornament Valley and try out the Rust Bucket track with Mater, or I could do a quick optional round of Sheriff's Hot Pursuit and thus get the option to choose between that or the Ornament Valley circuit. If I wanted to, I could complete the Tailfin Pass circuit and delinquent road hazards while I'm up here in the mountains, or I could drive all the way back down to play a bit of Monster Truck Mayhem at the Rust Bucket Stadium, and then come back later. In turn, Chick's challenge in Ornament Valley isn't going anywhere, so I'll kill some time in Radiator Springs with Doc's checkup. They are all small things that shouldn't really matter, but they very much help to make the process of playing through this game much less tedious. Here in Mater National, however, you have to play 3 races stuck in one area, and you have to play the one relay race in each location. No races in other areas of the map, and no choice to tackle them in different orders. You're tricked into thinking you're given the option in Ornament Valley, with the Rust Bucket and road races being available at the same time, only to be hit with the disappointment that the Rust Bucket ones are completely optional, and don't contribute in any way to the mandatory races other than being one of the 6 bumper stickers needed to unlock Stadium Race 4. Which, I forgot to mention this earlier, but even that manages to be lazy. The game fools you into thinking they designed a whole new stadium track for the 4th and final relay race of the game after the last 3 did nothing but reuse the old tracks, only to find out that they just reused the track design for the secret 4th stadium race. So joke's on you, bitch. Thought Santa was getting you a new racecourse for Christmas? No! He made you go through that slow, dreary process of getting every bumper sticker in the game just to have you race on a track that you just did before the credits. God, so much repetition. Are you just constantly forgetting that I've done all of this game? Do you have short-term memory? Am I playing Mater National or Memento? Memento National. All of this monotony just piles and piles on top of each other. And so, to finally answer the question of why did I play this game twice if it is such a chore to 100% complete, that's why. Yeah, much like with the first game, there's an extra difficulty level unlocked not by creating a profile with a specific name this time, but instead by using a cheat code. Before it was Champion Mode, but now we have Expert Mode. And after my comfortable experience of playing the game on Champion Mode, I was curious as to how Expert Mode would switch things up. I heard from Mini-Me's review of the game that Expert Mode was pretty much impossible, and so, fresh out of my recent holiday to Wales and finally hay fever free, I thought, fuck it, let's see what Expert Mode is all about. And I guess all of my criticisms about the game being incredibly repetitive seem less valid, as I am the one who chose to play this game twice, I am aware, but let it be known that it doesn't change the amount of tedious padding you will experience on your first playthrough of this game. As for Expert Mode itself, honestly, it felt only slightly harder than Champion Mode in general. There were plenty more instances of me losing races due to making too many mistakes while driving, and I really had to concentrate, but again, a lot of these races, first try. But that didn't stop me from running into my fair share of bullshit in Expert Mode. There were 2 tracks in particular that were such a pain in the arse because the AI racers drive so perfectly that it feels like they're programmed with a big middle finger pointed at you, and because of that you have to play through these courses with such painful accuracy against wonky physics and obstacles that kill any momentum you have, making catching up to whoever's in the lead virtually impossible. The upper mine. Dear God, does playing this race on Expert Mode make you hate something you once loved dearly? The bumpy mountain roads that you'll have a nightmare trying to stay balanced on whilst the other cars just seem to glide across them with no issue at all, needing to guess the quickest route through the mining town, trying to get onto this giant bridge by keeping your speed going on this very narrow road that you can either fall off by accident or get bumped off by the other cars, and those godforsaken minecarts with needing to predict where and when they're going to appear, while keeping your speed going so that no one else overtakes you or else you can kiss victory goodbye. It took me 43 minutes of playing this track over and over, trying my absolute damnedest to get first place, compared to the 3 to 4 or so minutes that the racetracks in the game usually take me to win on my first attempt. But none of that could have prepared me even slightly for the unfair unpredictability of Stadium Race 4. The secret final race of Cars Mater National Championship on Expert Mode might as well have been my ultimate final challenge for fully completing this game twice. This is the hardest race of the whole game, hands down. Tires down? Anyway, unlike the upper mine where there's a bunch of tight bends, narrow shortcuts and bumpy roads to slow you down, there's now no obstacles at all to slow any of the cars down at all. Even the patches of sand and grass do nothing to slow your opponents down. That is if they ever end up off the track in the first place. It's 2 things. First, this long winding corner before the finish line is absolutely bullshit. It doesn't matter if you're boosting or power sliding to go faster, you will be overtaken, and those other racers will just get further and further ahead as you fall behind completely powerless. Second is everybody's favourite Ferrari, Giovanni. He may not have been a compelling rival to McQueen in this story, but by God did he become my sworn enemy in this final race. If by whatever circumstances he takes the lead and gets far enough ahead so that the other cars can't bump into him and slow him down, you've lost. Otto, Goodman and Emma, they're not as bad to try and overtake if they get into the lead, though they'll most likely snag victory away from you at the last minute on that bloody bend. But if the manufacturer gods of the Cars universe just so happen to grace Giovanni with taking the lead, you may as well restart the race because you are now permanently in the not winning zone. 45 minutes on the Upper Mine track was bad enough, but Stadium Race 4 took me 57 minutes to win. Yes, nearly an hour of trying to beat one final race that I already did on Champion Mode, but I just had to beat on Expert Mode for the sake of my own sadistic bragging rights. Oh, and on a side note, I tried beating Ramon's Rhythmic Rumble on Expert Mode, but every time I got towards the end of the final level, the game kept freezing. My friend suggested using my bulkier PS2 instead of the slim one, thinking the cooling fan wasn't powerful enough to keep the system stable. I deleted my save file of my first game from my memory card, thinking it had run out of space. I checked for any scratches or dust marks on the disc, all of that, but nothing changed. So I had to change the difficulty to either Champion or Rookie mode just to progress. Damn, all those frame rate issues in the cutscenes, and this is where it couldn't take anymore. The PS2 just can't handle the Rhythmic Rumble. I did it. By some miracle, I did it. And so now I can say, if you are ever going to play this game, please play on Champion Mode, and only go for Expert Mode if you feel like whatever gods are looking down upon us aren't pissing into your hair, knowing full well they've just drank a huge bottle of Pepsi. As for what else the cheat codes unlock, you get the infinite boost and a fast start option as before, which I once again didn't bother with, and the option to unlock every character and paint job for arcade mode. Though weirdly, I didn't need to do that this time around. Yeah, on my first playthrough, just by going through and completing every race and minigame, I had enough bonus points to unlock every character and paint job, as well as all the concept art. Though that's probably because any bonus points you collect in the main world map now respawn anytime you exit a race. That exploit definitely helped me along. I ended up using the cheat code anyway because it allowed me access to these new exclusive paint jobs for McQueen. The piss yellow one.
I am B.
This random blue one, and one that's suited for an 80s music video. I say we're crashing cars! Watching games loading! As well as these new wheel colours for your rims, though because the camera is always behind me, I hardly ever notice them. How do you get these unique colours? By collecting these wheel parts and paint cans scattered across the world map with no markers hinting where they are. Just like with Lizzie's postcard hunt. It's nice to once again see the concept art for this game, seeing the early ambitious plans and additional material that got cut from the game. It looks like they wanted to include Bessie the road paving machine again, which was meant to be this random pile of asphalt in the road outside town. Seriously, what is it with Bessie always getting shafted? That came out wrong. Shouldn't be any surprise, didn't spend long in arcade mode. Not only because I played these racetracks so many times that I'm basically married to them, but because yet another thing that takes the biscuit is that the races in the levels stay exactly the same. No randomised cast of characters to make it feel like a new experience, none of them using new paint jobs. The only time it changes the character is if you're already playing as a character from the preset roster. But only that one changes, nobody else. That's so lame! You also can't play as Emma in the Rust Bucket races, you're stuck with only Lightning and Mater again, even though she's right there in the final race. And while it's cool getting to customise a tag team for the relay races in this mode, you can't customise the paint jobs. It's like everything that's new and cool comes with a catch. And so, I didn't bother trying to win all the races in arcade mode because I was just so bored. Sure, you can now play as Luigi in the races instead of just a minigame, and we've also got both Fillmore and Sarge as playable characters this time. But does it matter when you're already bored of the same racetracks against the same characters while also stuck with the same limited number of songs compared to the last game? The game's soundtrack already feels lacking with how there's nothing playing in the world map, other than when you drive to a level marker.
How you doing?
That's weird, but the song choice is much smaller. There's a couple of returning pieces from before. I actually like how we can listen to High Speed Heist and Lightning Strikes Back in the road races this time, and we even get some new additions like Life is a Highway, which is a joy to listen to in a Cars game, and Stop the Dwayne Johnson. But with how long the tracks can last and how many times you'll have to replay them, the songs may start to grate on your nerves, like that instrumental rock cover of Route 66. And there's no option to turn specific songs off in the jukebox. No joke, when I played this game again on expert mode, when I got to the optional minigames, I turned the music off and listened to YouTube videos in the background, just to keep an active mind while doing all of this. I've never had that before with Cars the video game. I could beat the main campaign once and then do it all over again and still rock out to the music as I speed along. So long as White Knuckle Ride and stay off the list, of course. Oh yeah, I once again won't be able to show off the multiplayer mode. Maybe when my sister visits for Christmas and I find a second PS2 controller somewhere, I'll ask if she's up for it, but if I want us to enjoy ourselves, I'd pick the multiplayer for the first game. Not this. There were big plans for Meta National, plans that were just too big of an ask for making it in less than a year. The first game had cut content, of course, but the vast majority of what was planned for that game made its way into the final product. But for Meta National, there's quite a lot of stuff we didn't get to see that's just inaccessible and lost to the sands of time. Unless you have the PC version. As is to be expected with a PC release of a game, there is, as always, the benefit of mods. One of those I will talk about in a bit, but for the fortunate players who did decide to deconstruct the coding of Meta National, remnants of the cut content have been discovered, further supported by a Nintendo Wii prototype discovered by hiddenpalace.org. I don't want to risk trying to run any of this on my computer without igniting a collapsed sun in my house, but I'll go through a bunch of information that can be found with the prototype and the beta build discoveries. Some of it confirms what we already pieced together, like how Bessie was indeed planned to be in this spot of the road covered in asphalt in early versions of Radiator Springs, and some of it is standard work-in-progress builds, like how in concept the characters of Gudmund and Koji were originally named Sven and Hiro respectively. But most interestingly, it gives us some information on the more elusive characters of the game, such as Snotrod being planned to be fully playable in arcade mode, which would explain his several out-of-nowhere appearances throughout the road races and these blink and you'll miss it cameos of him in the title screen intro, hinting that they must have gotten so close to finishing programming him into the final game, but just had to cut him out in the 11th hour. He, among several characters, were planned to be playable for the races and minigames, including the Rust Bucket races, Buford, Lewis and Judd, Fletcher, who would have made sense as Gerald is one of the reoccurring NPCs we see in the road races too, and those introduced in this game, Philip and the mysteriously elusive Yuri. Yuri, the Russian car, appears as a random NPC racer in both Inside the Turkey and Canyon Run, even appearing in the 360, PS3 and Wii versions of Relay Races 1 and 3, once thought by the fans to be another international racer going off his beta build, is now believed to fill the same role as Philip does as another visitor to Radiator Springs just to take part in the championships. While nothing is directly known about his personality, as there are no cutscenes introducing him, he is believed to be a confident, attention-loving guy who is here to make a name for himself, as evident by his isolated voice lines.
Ух ты! Famous cars everywhere! American racing! I love it!
There were unused paint jobs for characters like Fillmore, an unused Dynaco paint job for Monster McQueen, huge loss there, and perhaps most disappointingly, they cut some songs that were going to be carried over from the previous game. Radiator Springs at Night, Night Darling and Tailfin Pass, all songs that were used in the game's world map. So they certainly must have planned to have these songs play in this world map as well, on top of an unused electronic remix of the main theme of the game, playing into the rock element of Meta National's overall soundtrack. They really would have helped to make this world feel less empty to drive through. Such a shame to lose them from the final product. We also got some unused Lizzie and Stanley icons, probably for the old-timey race between them that was scrapped from the first game, and unused icons for Sally, whose exclusion I am sure many other fans find the strangest. She was a major character in the first film and a strong reoccurring character in the last game, so to have her not appear here, and I'm getting tired of saying this, makes the game feel empty. It's believed to be because EA owned the rights to Porsche in video games and they charged too much for the license to use Sally's design basis, as she is indeed a Porsche. So most likely wanting to prioritise the money for testing the game's stability, that is probably why they had to scrap Sally from Meta National. Thanks for being really considerate, EA, you've never let us down. And then, in the midst of the endless modding to find beta elements and the demo, from the heavens descends Cars High Octane. This is a huge community-driven mod that seeks to create a much more engaging experience out of the PC build of Meta National. Not only bringing back characters like Philip, Yuri and Snotrod, not only bringing back the excluded songs including the remix of the main theme, but also splicing in elements of both the first game and the game preceding Meta National, Cars Race-O-Rama, which originally didn't have a PC release. Every track, and I mean every track, as well as every single character including non-playable ones like the Piston Cup race cars, the Queen's race cars, all of the neon cars and so on, this is just so cool to look at. And while it is a shame I can't play this because, again, I don't have the PC version of the game and I don't want to risk turning my PC into a fire hazard trying to run these mods in the first place, I'm just happy that this thing exists at all. Taking scrapped elements that were almost lost due to a short production cycle and bringing them back is one thing, but making an ultimate edition of Meta National that shows the potential the original game could have had, that just warms my heart, it really does. If you've got the PC specs for it, I highly recommend going after this version of the game. Cars Meta National Championship is a repetitive disappointment, feeling like every time they have something good, it's cancelled out by something shit. The new tracks have fascinating designs that expand upon the already magnificent world of the first game that you'll never be able to fully appreciate as you can't stop to observe your surroundings, and you'll be made to redo these tracks so often that you'll grow sick of the sight of them. There's new songs in the soundtrack, but the amount of songs to listen to is pitiful and completely omitted from the main world. Anything new or interesting like the characters and the story are not taken far enough, and the things they do take further like the mini-games to unlock the final race and the main campaign itself are a drawn-out, tedious trek through a swamp, with a Radiator Springs world that on the surface looks the same, sounds mostly the same, but feels soulless. To borrow a line from Some Call Me Johnny that he used to critique Sonic Forces back in 2017, Meta National doesn't leave me wanting more. It leaves me asking, where's the rest of it? It's not a stain on humanity. Hell, it's not even that bad of a video game in general, but it's an incredibly mediocre 5 out of 10 for a Cars game. If you are to play this game at all, again, I'd point you in the direction of the PC version so you can try out the High Octane mod. But if you can, either version of the game on consoles is fine. I recommend playing the story mode normally to see the cutscenes for the first time, then use the cheat codes to unlock everything else without playing the minigames. The effort of going for 100%, the cosmetic change with the bumper stickers, the secret fourth race, it's just not worth it. But even then, I'd just tell you to go and play the first game. It may be too easy and the graphics obviously aren't as good, but none of that matters because it's a game that feels alive. There's layers of quality to love about it, the colourful new characters, the writing, the structure, the vast open world, the overall atmosphere is just better. You know, thinking about it, it's interesting putting this game side by side with Cars 2 the movie. Both of these were sequels to a Cars 1 project that had interesting concepts but didn't take them far enough and took the wrong ideas too far. Thus, both failed, only for different reasons. Cars 2 the movie failed because it tried to be too different to the original Cars movie. Tonally, it was all over the place and made dumb decisions like making Mater the main character and portraying the spies and villains as complete fools, while the World Grand Prix was sidelined as a B-plot. Meta National failed because it tried to be exactly like the first Cars game, but it had way less to work with. therefore needing to repeat itself and stretch things out for the sake of reaching the same length completion-wise, while breathing no new life into the Cars world. And look at that, they both prominently feature Mater in them as well. The only difference was that one was a good way to use him, and the other was even more of a failure because of it. If I had a penny for every time a sequel to a Cars project wasn't as good as the first one that also prominently features Mater, with a British girlfriend no less, I'd have 2 pennies, which doesn't sound like much, but it is weird that it happened twice. Therefore, Cars Mater National Championship is the weakest of the THQ Cars trilogy so far, no question. And at least after this video, is a game I don't see myself coming back to for a long time. Cars Racerama, please be a less repetitive, more entertaining experience than this. I'm actually quite excited to play Racerama again. Like, this is a game that I haven't played in a very, very long time. At least, not as much as like the first Cars game. So, yeah, it'll be a pretty interesting experience. But the next video on my channel is going to be a return to familiarity, as it were. And it's a video that I'm sure a lot of you have been waiting for. So, see you guys in a bit.